Hi, 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 hi. Så er der vist lydning. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Post. It's really nice to see you again. It's been a while, like almost 2 years ago since our last event. And since we were gathered at the Post Design Festival 2019, which was our biggest and most ambitious event ever. How many of you were there? Okay. Did you enjoy it? So you remember it? Yeah, because it seems like so long ago I can hardly remember it. So words can't really describe, and especially not in English, how much I've been looking forward to welcoming you back to Post and to live events. So the last 2 years has been sort of a struggle when you have a concept that's about bringing people together in a room. So it's, yeah. So, to invite you again to a physical, social experience and to interact together, not through a screen or a keyboard, but face to face in a room with a group of people that you can see and hear and touch and smell and feel is amazing. But however, when we were planning this event, we figured we better have a digital extension as well. Both as a security in case of another lockdown or other measures, and also to see if Post can extend itself into the virtual. So also welcome to everyone watching from afar. I hope my nervousness comes across flawlessly. It's a first for us with a hybrid event, so bear with us if it's not pixel perfect. Also a big thank you to Vocalhost for helping us setting up the live stream, and lots of love to my fellow poster, Rune, who's conducting the online show. So this day is very special, not just because you're here, but also because it's almost to the date, 5 years since we started Post in 2016. I would like to thank all the wonderful people who have helped shape the organization through the years, all your energy, ideas, and hard unpaid work. We're still doing this like off our backs, but yeah, we like it so much, at least I like it so much that I keep doing it. Also a huge thank you to the almost 70 participating artists, illustrators, academics, technologists, writers, theorists, programmers, thinkers, tinkers, hackers, and designers who've made Post what it is. And to help us celebrate our 5-year anniversary, I hope you will hang out with us after the program and have a drink with us. And if you're interested in becoming a part of Post, we might even buy you a second drink. But, okay. So, although the festival or Post tries to grasp big and abstract ideas, facilitate difficult discussions, and present mind-blowing visual expressions from the fringes of technology, Post has always been about the physical bringing people together. We believe that bringing together both intellectual and embodied knowledge and know-how adds some kind of magic to the discussions. As humans, we are living, breathing, multisensory organisms, not just algorithms, binaries, or avatars. We created Post to get designers, illustrators, and artists away from our screens and to interact in real life. The setup is simple. We stuff clever people into a room together, and we stay there for days, sharing experiences and discussing urgent matters. The 2019 festival was a huge success. Everybody loved it. The audience, the speakers, us, the organizers, the internet. We really thought we had a solid concept. We had international opportunities lined up to travel the Nordics, to set up Post events in our neighboring countries. We even won an award. Thank you. What could go wrong? Yeah. So one global pandemic later, here we are again, possibly more aware now than ever before that we are indeed fragile, soft tissue beings that need closeness and social stimulation to live properly. Also, after so long, finally it's possible to meet again and have social gatherings and events again. At the same time, or at least that's how I feel standing here, looking at you, there's an unfamiliar feeling about it, and it's slightly uncanny. Is this safe? I wonder how long this feeling will linger, but it's there. So please be mindful of the people around you, and let's make this an enjoyous experience for everybody. So, back to the program. Before the pandemic, social technology or surveillance technologies was already a big part of our lives. CCTV, social media tracking, Google's all-seeing eye, cameras with facial recognition software, etc. But for many of us, at least for me, these technologies lived opaque, invisible lives on the edges, on my field of vision, at least, high up on walls in cities, or behind the seemingly friendly interfaces of apps and devices. During the pandemic, many of us have gotten another closer and active relationship with surveillance technology. You all experienced it, getting in here, showing your Corona passport. With surveillance technology through Bluetooth, virus tracking apps, location-based registration for restaurants and venues, thermal cameras at airports, and physical Corona tests with swabs and apps linked to your personal health information. These measures are supposedly designed to make us feel safe, to keep us safe. But the technologies behind might have been developed for a fully different purpose. So how do these technological lenses affect the way we see the world? Today's theme is opacity. Using the Oxford Language definition, opacity is the quality of lacking transparency or being obscure in meaning. The objective of this evening is thus to explore how surveillance technology and other covert visual regimes might be used as tools for subversive artistic practices. Looking through a lens or even material that obstruct the view, it primes our interpretation of reality. What new realizations of the world might we find when looking through opaque filters? To help us get into the matter, we have invited designer Iyo Bisseck from Paris, and artist Stefan Kruse from Cologne, Copenhagen, whose work we are very excited to present to you. We'll start off with a screening of Stefan's film, A Lack of Clarity. After a short break, Iyo will present her work. Then we'll have another short break, and then I'll join them both here on stage for a discussion about their work and how to relate to opaque technologies and their aesthetic qualities. I have prepared a few questions for you and Stefan, but I hope that you in the audience here in the room and online will join in with questions. Toilets are in the basement, the bar is open. I'm super happy to see you. I hope you are too. So let's get this show rolling. And I would like to welcome on stage Stefan Kruse. Stefan is a Danish filmmaker and visual artist with a background in graphic design. In July 2017, he received a master's degree in visual culture and identity from the Royal Academy of Fine Arts School of Design. His work reflects an ongoing research into technical image production. Stefan is currently pursuing a postgraduate at the Kunsthochschule für Medien Köln. Stefan will give a short introduction to his work and to the film you're about to see. Please welcome on stage, Stefan.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to the whole team of Post festival, design festival. It's a really big honor for me to be here. I followed the festival since the very, very beginning because I was living in Copenhagen, and it was nice to see a festival that took this kind of content and embraced this discourse, and also invited international guests. It was like a new territory in Copenhagen. So it's really nice to be here, and I was very happy for the invitation. And yeah, I'm not going to say too much about the film since we are going to watch it, but I will say that the film is a kind of extension of my first film where I was dealing with found footage material. It has the title The Migrating Image. It's from 2018, and it's a kind of a film that was trying to approach the so-called refugee crisis through the images that were being created around the refugees and from the refugees. So kind of trying to, from a media theoretical point of view, analyze what happened and try to ask the question whether or not some of these images also were shaping the political ideas within Europe, and at the same time it was also a film that was looking deeper into certain camera technology, and also trying to question how all these military cameras were being used to portray the refugees. Like, what does it mean when a refugee is inside of a military image? Asking these questions when these images then travel throughout media into blogs, into right-wing blogs and so forth. So the film got me interested more into military aesthetics, and I was actually planning to do a completely different film after the first one, and I also embarked on it, which had another idea of making a kind of landscape film about the European borders, but an empty landscape. So I read somewhere that like 99% of what is being recorded on the European borders, the surveillance cameras, are empty landscape. So I had the idea to try and make a landscape film, but hopefully maybe one day I can finish that project. But anyways, through that research, it took me elsewhere, and it took me into a lot of producers of cameras, and a lot of very interesting companies, and that's basically what I will say about the film, I would say. And I also want to thank a few people here, because this is the first time I'm screening the film in Denmark, and there are a few people in the crowd that helped me tremendously with this film. Where do I start? Asbjørn Datter, who was the sound designer and composer for this film. In the beginning I introduced him to a very short clip and asked if he would be interested to work on it, and there was not really a clear idea of anything, but he totally embraced it and also took a lot of responsibility, and the film would not be as it is without him. So a big thank you, and thank you to my brother Matthias, who also I'm always talking about edits with and ideas. So yeah, thank you for guiding me. Who else in the room? Nilas, and then for always good talks. And Mads Christian Sandholm, who did the art direction of the film, all of the graphics you see in the film, and also the poster, the first official poster he did. So please give them a hand. And I think I'm going to start the film, and I will see you later.
We're just about to begin again. Thank you. Somebody has spent time at the ocean. Okay, so welcome back. It's a great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Iyo Bisseck. She's a French-based designer, researcher, and artist. She holds a BA in Media Interaction Design from ECAL in Lausanne, and has just finished, a few days ago, her master's in Visual and Augmented Reality Research from the Institut Polytechnique Paris. She's currently also doing research at the CNRS, focusing on biases in the modeling and perception of visual agents. Iyo is interested in power dynamics in artistic creation and production, which is why she's involved in projects as the Black Film Festival Zurich, Dreaming Beyond AI, or collectives such as Good for a Girl. That's how I know you, actually. Or, yeah, came to know your work. In her work, she's interested in the biases showing the link between technologies and systems of domination, and explores the limits of virtual worlds to create alternative narratives. So please welcome on stage for the first time in Denmark, Iyo Bisseck.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So my name is Iyo Bisseck. I'm 26 years old, no, 27 actually. It was my birthday 2 weeks ago, that's why. And I'm an artist, designer, and programmer. I'm currently doing a research in bias on virtual agents, and I had the occasion to work on a very beautiful project with a lot of wonderful people. And so I want to thank you tonight, Peter Folkmar, for the invitation. I also want to thank you, the Post Festival, and all the team, actually. So, especially for the subject like opacity. Opacity is a very important subject for me, because it's with this subject that I finished my bachelor in ECAL in Switzerland. So, for example, for the title, I talk about opacity and silence, how to break the silence. And actually, I put together opacity and silence because of, you know, for me, opacity is like this silence that you don't have any word, but they are meaningful. You know, this kind of silence that you cannot have a communication directly, but you know that they are expressing something, and that's why it's called How to Break the Silence. So I will just, I will share my path with you on this new technology and the bias. So one of the first examples of my project is a series of research and projects called AI Can You See Me? And it's very inspired by Joy Bolamwini. Joy Bolamwini is a very great researcher. So it started one day. I was in a workshop at ECAL with Jen Kogan, a coder and programmer. And we were using some facial recognition system. And all the people in my classroom were having a lot of fun, and me, the facial recognition system does not recognize me. So I was feeling a little bit frustrated. I wanted to understand why. I tried to move a lot to find exactly the good position in order to be recognized by the system. And for example, on the image you can see that even people behind me in the back can be recognized, and I was not. So I really wanted to understand why. So during this workshop with Jean Kogan, we had to do a project, and I decided to create the Human Detector. Okay, so the Human Detector is an experiment where you have to click on the button without being recognized as a human. For me, I wanted to use the space of experiment, of installation, to create new norms, and to have a norm that I can always win, and to see people just act and try to move as I did. So I will just show you the videos of the project. When you succeed, and only when you succeed, you can see the video of yourself being totally full, trying to just defeat the AI. And it's very important for me to have on all the projects that I'm making a sort of transparency that can help you to understand what is behind the machine, what is behind the technology. And it was very funny to see people trying and to just think about the body in front of the camera and trying to do not be human. For this project, I was using a system called PoseNet. So it's a system that can help detect not just only the face, but also the elbow, all the body part actually. And when I tested, I just saw that they were able to recognize me. Even though the picture are behind a big window, they can still recognize me. So actually, for the experience, for the installation, I have to exactly do the same as the other people. But I just asked myself why PoseNet can recognize me as a human being, while ML4A, so the other technology that I use, cannot. And as I was continuing my research, I came across so many pictures of people, of black people not recognized by facial detection, and I was just trying to understand, okay, what is happening? And then I discovered the work of Joy Bolamuni. So it's a computer scientist and digital activist from Ghana and America. In her work, for class, she was in MIT, and for class, she had to discuss with a robot. The robot have facial recognition, and the robot cannot recognize her, so she decided to put a white mask to be recognized. She called this problem the coded gas, so it's a problem that happen a lot with facial recognition system, and it's not a problem just for Joy Bolamuni and I saw a lot of examples of people in their everyday life, for work, for example, health, for also prison, being in front of this technology with a lot of bias. For example, Joy Bolamuni did a project called Gender Shades. This project, she take a lot of pictures of politicians around the world, and she decided to analyze the recognition facial, like tools like Microsoft or Face++, Amazon. She noticed that for the results, for lighter male, it was working at 99%, and for darker female, the difference can be up like 35%. So she very just points that it's not just about racial bias, but we can also think about gender bias around this. As I was talking about people that meeting this kind of problem in their everyday life, especially with COVID now, we can see that there is a lot of exam in remote with some camera, and this to avoid cheating, they are using some facial detection, and the case of Kiana Caton during a by exam have to put a lot of light in front of her face in order to be recognized. And I was very looking into just trying to understand the algorithm, trying to get into the problem, and I discovered the book of Katie O'Neill called Weapon of Mass Destruction. And in this book, she very talk about one of the things that I met when I was trying to understand what is happening in this algorithm. In this book, she is talking about opacity. Opacity is everywhere in this kind of technology because a lot of reasons, but also because of professional secrets. They do not want to have everybody to have access to the algorithm. And also, as it's very technical point of view, they just say, trust us. You have to trust us. It's mathematics you cannot understand, but just trust us. So in this book, actually, after reading this book, I decided to say, okay, the technology is opaque, fully opaque for most of the system. How can I communicate with the technology? How can I just create a relationship with this kind of technology that is very silent? So I decided to focus on highlighting bias. So that I will talk to you about my other project called Face Access. This project was very inspired by the collective Good for a Girl by Elise Connor and Mathilde Avogadro. This collective was doing a lot of action in ECAL during my school, and at the same time I just discovered this article of recruiting of AI recruiting tools that show bias against women. So Amazon tried to hire new people, and they just find out that the tools that they were using was systematically just remove women from the equation. And at the same moment at ECAL, Mathilde Avogadro and Elise were doing a lot of action because this school was very great. I had very good moments in this school, and the teacher was very, very passionate. But when I look at the teacher, they were almost all men. I think in media interaction design, there was just like one woman, one teacher woman. And so Elise and Mathilde just asked some question about, okay, when we are looking at the student in the class, we are half women, half men. So the question is just about where are the women after that? Why on our system the women are disappearing? So that's why I created Face Access. I decided to take database not only just at ECAL but of a lot of schools in Lausanne, and trying to do like a fictional project about trying to access the school or the institution of your choice with a picture of your face. And you can choose if you want to be a student or if you want to be a teacher. And when you're taking a picture of you, it's telling you the percentage, sorry for my French accent, the percentage of succeeding for going into this institution. I was talking about transparency, so you can see some picture of students that can explain why your percentage is, what is it. And after that, I discovered the work of Lorna Ross in a book of Rhea Benjamin. So Lorna Ross is a researcher, and on the research is very focusing on bias in photography, especially the printed one. And it makes me think that one of the first bias that I had with technology, it was with this machine that in the street where you can take pictures. Maybe 15 years ago, I was trying to take picture of myself, and every time it was so black, I cannot see my face in it. And I was not understanding why on the streets there is all these machines that just can work for some of the people. And Lorna Ross, in her research, actually one of the researches is called Making Skin Visible Through Liberatory Design. She decided to talk about all the history of printed photography, and she also talked about disconscious racism. So I will just read what she's saying. This is an example of what Joyce King has labeled disconscious racism, by which she referred to a form of racism tacitly accept dominant white norm and privilege. Disconscious racism is not the absence of consciousness, but an impaired consciousness or disturbed way of thinking about race as compared to, for example, critical consciousness. It is much like an occasion, but passing consciousness of the subtitle racial application, embedded practice, object, institution, and policy. And it represents an uncritical habit of mind, including perception, attitude, assumption, and belief, that justify inequality and exploitation by accepting the existing order of the thing as given. Actually, what she said in the article, that all this technology have a lot of bias, I was talking about, and she tried to really explain first the relationship that we can have with all this technology, and not just with technology, but with all the objects, but also to understand why developer and why technician of photography, for why it was not a problem, and from when they start interesting about this project. And for example, she said that in the 60s or in the 70s, when the Black Party started to be famous in the United States, and they start to need some pictures, and it started to be a very commercially interesting, the progress started in this way. So with the Lorna Ross article, when I'm meeting technology, I'm trying to highlight bias. I'm trying to just understand what is behind and why they are saying the things they're saying. One of the examples that I met in my research on bias, I found this article of some people that was working on an androgynous avatar called Ruth. And then they tried to make a declination of this avatar, one female and one male. And I just saw that one of the parameters for the gender was the skin. And I was not really understand why in a scientific article this kind of parameters can be taken into account. And is it disconscious racism, as we saw with Lorna Ross? And actually, on the question on racial gender, racial and gender bias, there is a lot of connections that we can make. For example, when I was creating a virtual avatar with a software called Feijin, I tried to create something with my pictures, and then it create an avatar. And then after that, you can see that there is a lot of parameters. And when you try to play with the parameters, it's when you can start to have some meaning behind the bias that you can find. So, for example, I can show you one of the videos. I think you cannot see really well the parameters. Okay, so now I'm launching the video. But it's very interesting to see that this story, you can see it on the technology, but it's also directly linked with our social life, actually, with the things that is happening in our everyday life. And it's what I like with technology, is to just see the link between this bias and this social events. For example, especially on this time, you can see, I don't know if you heard a lot about this subject, but I did, one of the main subjects was about Aminata Saini, but he's one of the sprinters, but there is too many sprinters who had exactly the same way, the same path, the same experience than her. So Aminata Saini is suffering of hypertestosterone. So what is it? Hypertestosterone means that you have too much testosterone for women. So with this kind of testosterone, she was not able to be a part of the Olympic Game Federation this year. And actually, one of the main questions is, okay, who decided the good and the good testosterone that we have to have, and who are creating this norm? And it's exactly the same with the photography. One of the questions was, okay, who is creating this norm? I'm just wondering exactly the same question right now. On my research, I also discovered the work of Maria Lugones, who are working a lot about coloniality of gender, and also is talking about the fact that the colonized woman have to reinvent herself as woman on the base of the norm, on the criteria, and on the practice that are not made by them and for them, actually. So, especially the discussion of the norm and of the technical point is very important for me, especially because now I'm working on scientific file, not only but on my research. And on scientific file, I have to respect some rules. I have to have previous articles that explain why I'm choosing that, and I have to have standards, actually. And one of the standards that I was using to create a virtual agent, it was something called the Fitzpatrick skin phototype. Actually, I decided to use it because on Gender Shade project of Bolamwini, she was using exactly the same skin phototype. And then, when I decided to look a little bit closer on this phototype, I just noticed that the gradients is not equally the same. And I remember for this period I was in Turkey and I was very tan, and when I came back in France, nobody noticed that I was tan, but all my later friends were having a lot of compliments about the skin, and after I was just asking myself that, do people manage to see the difference of the skin? And what is exactly the link on the technology, what I'm creating, software, when I'm creating algorithm or virtual agents? So it was one of the questions. I also discovered the work of Fernanda, who was working on the virtual skin color representation, and you can just see that the gradient is very different right now. Much more equilibrated. So on all my work with this technology, I have one of the oops. Oh, it's not me. I don't have iPhone. So on my work on technology, first I meet bias, and then I try to understand why there is bias, and then I find opacity, and then after opacity I try to highlight bias with experiment like you see with the software, just trying to understand what is the thinking between bias. I also try to just asking myself when I'm creating software, which are the bias that I'm putting inside. And I discovered the work of Christopher Santer maybe at the beginning of my study. And what Christopher Santer is doing is not just asking himself behind which kind of the bias are you using. He really tries when he's creating objects to have some objects that the user can just think about what they are doing right now. So leave the disconscious racism or disconscious all discriminations that you can have, but having a very active relationship to the objects that you're using. Not just technology. In this example, he helped us to create a microserver to create a server where you can have your mail. So instead of using things like Gmail or Hotmail, you have your own server, and it's very interesting because it's also focusing on materiality, thinking that technology is not just algorithm. Technology it's materiality, but it also says that, okay, you are using things, you have to understand why you are using. You have to not build it yourself because you can just be helped, but they stay active in the relationships that you have with others, listening about what they tell you, even if they are still silent, but yes, stay in an active relationship. And I know that doing this kind of things and being active on everything that you're touching, it's just requiring a lot of time. But I think it's very important on this field of technology to have a reflection of time. Oops. So that's why the last part of my presentation will be about relationality and the critique of time. I discovered the relationality during a workshop by Franziska Kamis, Giacoman, and Tina Regen. This workshop was organized by the Patriarchal Design. This workshop was a lot about relationality. So what is relationality? Relationality is the principle of relationality enables us to refute the discrediting of the past. It opens the possibility of understanding for which the past is not fixed and already gone, for which the past is not a narrative or object of the present. The relationality of time sees the past of actually constituting to the present. Okay, so this article is from Rolando Vasquez, and the article is called Toward the Decolonial Critique of Modernity. And actually, in this article, is doing a very, very hard critique of modernity. And on this critique of modernity, he just proposed relationality as a way to approach life, and not just only technology, as a way to connect to the thing, as a way to listen. And on the technology, and especially on the modernity, we can see that modernity is something that belongs to the present, and all the cultures that is not modern is very, in our imagery, connected to the past. And he's doing a very large critique of that by, he really wants to destroy the line that make the past be the past, and then it's finished, and then it's dead, and then you have the present, that is the moment right now, and after you have the future. With the relationality, the past is alive. The past is a resource to help us to understand actually all this opacity, all this bias, and all this silence, and by being in relationship to the past, by being in a relationship also to the history, and which history, and this is very important to question, it very help us to break this silence and to have words, concrete words about what is happening with this technology. So, I don't know if you finished reading. So thank you. I want to say thank you for being here and for listening. Also special thanks to Peter Folkmar and the team of the festival, and also thank you Anna Bergman for everything. And if you have any question, if with my accent or something like that, there is something that you didn't really understand, or if I went too fast, I'm very available, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's okay with yeah. No, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really great. I never maybe it's just me being naive, but the link between modernity and the way of shunning the past in such a active way connected to coloniality is just it's a super interesting notion that I haven't realized before. But so okay, we'll just take 5-minute break, and then we'll be back with the discussion. And hopefully you have a lot of questions. So let's have a break, and then we'll be back. Thank you. Much, both of you, for coming and showing us your work. It's two very different kinds of work. Yours is very artistic. It's a film. Yours is very research heavy and very experimental, trying out stuff, and very political and embodied experience. So you didn't know each other's work beforehand. Do you see, like, what similarities do you see between your work, and how, like, see, I know it might be, it's a big question to start with, but like, you're very much like, or at least that's how I interpret it, looking from the outside, observing the images, commenting on that, and yours is like more like personal experience that brought you to this place in your research. So like, it's like, it's two different directions into a field of opaqueness and what surveillance technology and surveillance aesthetic might mean to us. That wasn't really a question, but
comment.
But like, do you see like similarities in your work? Maybe that's a way to start. There's 2 microphones.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think like the first project you showed, you're actually you're trying to get to expose yourself, or you're trying to actually be recognized. And I think in my case, and much of what I was dealing with, was I was trying to avoid, hide from the other, or at least that's what I was pondering about. And I think I see a lot of similarities for sure. I think even though my project in a sense is also, it's more looking upon images and talking about the act of looking.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this film compared to the other one, I made a point in like actually incorporating my own body into it through mainly the sound design, and you hear certain movement, and I wanted to play with that contrast of the inner body and the inner reflection contrast, the very distant, in this case Las Vegas, surveillance military company. Like, I wanted to make a point in have these 2 very opposite dots, and then in that space between them create work. So even though it's in a subtle way, I'm not exposing myself visually in the project, it still was it's a point in the film for me that I wanted to at least incorporate also myself.
Yes, as you said, on my project I wanted to be recognized, but not recognized just to be recognized, because I also know what is behind all this recognition, and if I can just avoid being recognized in too many ways, I will just take it. So it's just not about the will to be recognized. It's much more about questioning why is effective for you, or for white people, and why not for black people, and just questioning the functionality actually, and all the impact of this functionality. But for sure, if I can just, yes. And for the link with your work, actually, what I just saw, it was very about the relationship and how do we question technology. Like, for both of them is something very oppressive in a way. In your film, it's something that I saw with all the lights. There is like a feeling of oppression, and that's why you want to escape. And you bring it in a poetic way, a very poetic way. And in my work, I was trying to just communicate, have a dialogue with the technology, and trying to speak and trying to okay, oppression is there, what we can do, and being in an active mode, I would say.
It just made me think about also when you talked about time in the end, and time as a and history as a concept, and history eliminated maybe the very, let's say, complicated history of the world is maybe simplified to the algorithm, and that's why the certain biases are implemented also. And I think in my work, I like to use history as a point of view to talk about the present, and that's also why there's actually, like, even in the film, excerpts from Paul Virilio's book, Vision Machine, talking about Paris at the end of the 17th century. And yeah, I was just very intrigued when you talk about, yeah, and I'm sure you know more about this than me, but history in algorithms.
So yeah, you're both like also very interested in like the aesthetics of the visual expression of these technologies. Like why is it important for us why is it important for you to investigate the visual expression of technologies that's developed for maybe not even, like, as we talked about now, there was us talking about it, that some of these technologies are not even developed for human beings. It's developed for machines, a way of teaching machines to look at the world. But what does it tell us? Like, what can we learn from, like, looking at this, like, weird, distorted vision of the world?
Do you want to start? I can start.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah. No, I think I definitely have also a visual interest in these images, and I think going back to also my first project, got interested in one specific German artist called and his work with, and he coined a term called operational images, which are, as you described, like working images that work between machines, like they have no kind of social intention, and his research was very much about understanding these images, or at least exposing them also, and this, I think for me it's also because I have this interest in military aesthetics, and a lot of this technology that we're talking about today, it's coming from the military, and that's the root of many of these technologies. And I think, even if you look at the battlefield today, like the war zone, it doesn't look like it did even 20 years ago. Maybe you can't even if you get up close, you can't see the battlefield. But if you look at the images and the technology that thrives and goes through the weapons and the cameras, that's actually where the warfare is going on. And then the link between image making and warfare, and image making as a soft power, if that's a term, that's what interests me. And especially when also with this project I got interested in how military technology travels into surveillance technology companies, because now we also live in the age of, in a sense, like the internet, we're all data sheep in a sense, right? So, and also through what was happening in Denmark at the moment, our dear minister Nick Hækkerup was pushing facial recognition systems, then I became interested in the trail from military to surveillance companies, and are these companies the same, and how do they, what is this shadow infrastructure, this shadow economy? That's my interest in.
So about why I'm focusing on on this technology. Actually, on my bachelor, I did a bachelor of visual communication in media interaction design. So the visual is it's very important for me. And I really think by controlling visual, you can control imaginaries. And on the article of Lorna Ross that I show you, she was saying that one of the disconscious racism was about the lack of imaginary of people that invented this technology. So by focusing on imaginary, not just on imaginary, but focusing on what would be the image of tomorrow, what would be the image of today, and what was the image of yesterday. It's very, very important for me to just allow us to create something new and to go out of the borders that are shaped by the people that have the possibility to decide the narrative behind the images.
So now I turn to you. Do you have any questions? Yes, thank you. Great. See, I can give this to you.
Yeah, I can speak up. Otherwise, thank you. Yeah, so I was wondering, hearing about your work, Iyo, is that correct? Yeah. I was wondering if, Stefan, you also found examples of racial bias in your work with surveillance technology. In a sad kind of way, it would make sense if there was a different kind of racial bias. I was just curious about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say with the research for this project, I was mostly studying, at least at the end of the research, sort of white America male figures having these companies and figuring represented in the videos of them. I'm currently also researching for new projects, which I hope hopefully can connect the two films, which is about how the technology of Frontex, the protective arm of Europe, has developed since the last 5 years, when the budgets since the so-called refugee crisis happened have exploded through the roof. So they have a lot of very interesting research projects that they've started in different universities. One of them, which is they call eye border control, and it's an AI lie detector test that you do online before you travel from abroad to Schengen. And the problem with this test is it already registers, of course, it does an analysis through a series of questions before you travel. You give the date and then you talk to the AI, which is, even the AI is set in this PC mid-tone color, as if it's not racial bias. But what the critics of this research project say, that already your skin color is registered and it plays into your final risk analysis. So not with this project, but with this upcoming project, there's already been a case of that, I would say.
Any more questions?
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. I didn't see your video, Stefan. I'm sorry I missed out. But it was very interesting to hear your presentation, Iyo, and it's my impression that you have a really interesting environment in Basel, or where connected to depatriarchized design and good for a girl and stuff like that. Do you know why this environment has happened, and this critical perspective on design and also translating it into practice? Do you know why it has happened for you?
I don't really know why or how it happened, but I just remember when I did the project Face Access, I was feeling so alone. I was feeling very alone on very deep questions, and also don't have the possibility to, okay, I want to do a project about are all white, how can I talk about racial bias with them without having discussion like, no, the developers are not racist, you know. Just sometimes I was feeling so alone that having a community with you, having so many beautiful people that are there to believe in you, sometimes more than you believe in yourself, and to just push you, it was very needy, and that I think that's why I have all this relationship with depatriarchal design, futurist, good for a girl, and also too many associations. It's by building not alone in my room with my algorithm and with myself in my lecture, but being in touch with people, being very connected and creating something together, being an inspiration for all, and also have the possibility to really think design in other way, to think design not just like being the best or being in a competition, but really in a way of solidarity, I would say. And that's why I have this chance to have this community with me.
Yeah, I'm also quite interested in why there's this critical mass happening around Basel, and was it the reason why you started studying at ECAL, or did you learn depatriarchal design, these other groups? Did you learn about them after moving to Switzerland, or did you move to Switzerland because of them?
No, I learned after, and yes, I'm working with depatriarchal design in Basel, but also working with very many other groups actually, and one of the activists and sociologists that I really like is Fanny Noel, when she's working about the political groups that she's inside. It's just not there is not just one field, and what I really like is to have, for example, one community where we can have some question about things. But for example, the work I'm doing with Black Film Festival, it's also very important for me to have a platform where people can just have the distribution of some film, for example, of black realizators, and not realizators, it's English, but you just understand. And yes, so connection, I think, it's a relation, being in relation with others and with things, it's very important. I think when you try to create new norms,
Any questions? Yeah, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question, but I have a question for you. In one of in your first work, you were saying that you were working on a refugee crisis, and that this refugee crisis you work on technology and surveillance. So we can see that there is a link in the way you see our society right now, and all the surveillance being very important now, especially because of sanitary crisis. Without question, but how can you see the future of that, of surveillance linked to refugees, as you work on that, and how in your head you decided to connect the control of body to anybody, and the control of
sees body especially?
Yeah, it's a big question for sure.
Sorry.
No, it's a good question. Yeah, I think that what I've seen also with the first two films and now the research for this hopefully third film, is that the refugees are kind of on the first frontier of, in the first film, like at first they have nothing to say in the visual perception of them. They are just the content. They are the content that fuels the constant breaking news cycle that we're all in a way. But they don't really have a voice. But they are the main sort of, now it sounds a little bit simple, but like content for newsreel. And I think that's what was also interesting for me in the first project, to approach it with the same kind of aboveness or verticality as the news chopper. I try to like put myself on even like above them, but use their same tactic to talk about their images the way they talk about refugees. And so in the new project, where it seems that these measures put at the borders, they are not really, they are, like, it seems like maybe 10 steps ahead of what, I don't know, how this sanitary crisis will evolve and the technologies it will bring. But I'm very skeptical towards them, because a lot of them are even proven like, super vague in their efficiency, but they're good at gathering data. And so, but the technologies, as far as I can see, being easily implemented at the borders because of the sort of alertness and the kind of rumor that the refugee has. And so I think maybe it can be like a zeitgeist for the future to look, and that's what I'm trying to do with this new project, to see where it's going to develop. But at the same time, I would also say I have no idea. So yeah, I think that's my answer.
Yes. There's so much violence in you also said it, like this. Your pictures are very violent also because they are so redacted, both in the migrating image. You just have these silent images of people in boats on the Mediterranean, and then these images that are just like without color. It's just like this weird gray tones. Apparently this way of making images is a way of seeing the world more clearly, but it's it's an algorithm, or it's like a stupid computer that looks at the world, so it becomes like really like binary in its way of looking at the world, and it like removes all the detail and it almost becomes unrecognizable to us. So how do we I've completely lost my train of thought. I think I'm going to we have this notion. You also said it, Iyo, that we technology is not better or more just than society at large, but we have a hope at least, or a feeling that it might be that technology in itself is something good, or we tend to think better of technology than it actually is. Why do you think it's like that? Maybe it's impossible to answer.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sorry. Technology is not better or more just than society at large, but we tend to think that. And why do you think that is? Why do we why do we have why do we have these hopes that technology might save us? Maybe that's what I'm going at. Or do you think that are you technology positive or technology negative?
So actually, I think that technology is worse than our world actually, because when you think about who is making the technology, it's not our world. So I think that even in technology, you can see all the relationship to our social system. The technology can really be worse than our world, actually, because too many people do not have access, and the access of technology, especially in this crisis, we saw it with a lot of people who cannot have a computer, and we are not equal in this system, and that's even when we think about the materiality of the technology, actually, when we think about the material inside, where does it come from, and who is making, when you think of the hierarchy of the technology, you really understand that it's not something that I would call really positive, even if it can have very positive application. But what I'm thinking actually is not being negative or positive, just technology is there.
Yeah.
And I don't see a world right now saying, okay, we shut down everything, we just break our phone. And for now, it's not possible to have this world without technology. And I'm not sure that I want a world without, because I'm a technology lover. But as it's here, and we don't have the choice to live with the technology, let's find a way to create hope. Let's find a way to make this technology more accessible. Let's find a way for the application of the technology to just think about who is the center. Who is the center, actually, it's a question. When you're creating something, who is the center for you? For who are you creating? And for who you are not creating? So it's one of the main focus on the technology. It's not about saying it's wrong, let's leave technology to other people, because if we are doing that, we are leaving technology for Amazon people and we don't want them to shape technology. So now it's here, let's get into and let's find other narrative and other future and for everybody, with everybody. It's like, oh,
Yeah, no, I think I agree that maybe the biggest part of with technology today is that it also has, at least it's contributed to the fact that we've lost, I think, the vision for the future, because technology only operates, like you also were mentioning this, like in the present, it's only reacting very immediately. We need something to fix this now. Of course, some people would claim that the algorithm can help us with the climate crisis or something, and maybe it's also true. But I think the way I see it now, that actually we need human beings to come up with new thoughts and work like yours to expand actually the borders of these the technologies that exist, for it to be sort of fruitful, more human experience, and maybe also more bringing us more together, because I think maybe the main problem with technology and Facebook and stuff is that it's actually separating us more.
Yeah, you talked about like rehumanizing technology. That's a very beautiful notion.
Just we
with all the data, we are the object of observation with technology. We swipe, and we have to be the center of the technology. The technology do not have to use them in order to serve people, some big company, but we have to be the center. We have to switch a role, actually.
Do you have any questions? Because, yeah, great.
Hello, and thank you so much for great presentations. And my question could go to both of you actually, but it comes from your talk, Iyo, which is, I'm very inspired by a lot of the cases that you bring, and I hear about it, read about it other places as well. All of the biases that are so ingrained in the technology and in the algorithms that we're now using and building new technology on. But after all of the time that you've spent in that area, is there somewhere where you see that either the burden lies or the key is to start fixing some of that inequity? Do you have an idea of who has the key? Who needs to start moving to remove some of the sort of baseline biases, be it racist or sexist or else? I'm just curious if you see that there is somewhere we need to start pulling at the thread in order to make mentionable change.
Do you want to answer?
Thank you for pointing the fact that on my presentation I was focusing on racial and gender bias because I'm concerning, but when I was talking to bias, I'm sure that you all find bias in technology. People, non-binary people find a lot of bias where they have to fill some form. So, and especially if I'm with some creator as a post-festival is a graphic design based festival, even if there is a lot of application, I'm sure that in your everyday life you are with bias. And for your question, for me, I think that we are in a capitalist world, great news. And I think that the power belongs to the people who have and who just who have the technology, I don't have the word, but I think yes, who has the possibility to change the technology. It's a very complex question because some people do not have the time to think about technology. Actually, people have to think about eating, about some problems that is now in the present and not in the future. So it's very complex. But I just hope that also by making and by thinking the ownership of the technology, it can help us to just have the key, and the key is on the ownership. And for example, when we were looking on internet, before internet was okay, I have my server, and that's why I like the project of Christopher Center. It's very linked to server. It's like everybody has server, and we were all exchanging information, and then after one time, because of capitalism, some big companies start to own image, start to own video, start to own the things. And when you own something, you have the possibility to define the rules actually. And so finding one of the key to just think the technology differently, it's really about power and ownership for me. And so let's give power and ownership to people who do not have this possibility.
And I really like also what you showed about the project and the way of owning technology, because today it feels like technology is always becoming more of a black box. Like everything is harder to be able to repair and understand it somehow. I was wondering if you have, maybe it's not a question, it's more you have a tip of more technology that is accessible in the way that you showed with a server and something like that. I'm standing so close to the speaker, it's really do you have any tips from similar technologies like that you are yourself are inspired by or something like that? That is accessible in a way.
Yes, there is a lot of accessible tools and technology, and I can give, for example, ML5, even if I was very critical. I critique a lot some of the bias that I find. It's also a way to train our own model, and it's for artists, so a lot of artists start doing artificial intelligence. My workshop was with Jim Kogan, and Jim Kogan is very, very into making the technology accessible. But one of the questions that I have, it's a very hard question, and I'm not agreeing with myself. Is that it's true that we have to own technology, we have to understand, and we have to create and to just take back the power. And also to do that, I know that I'm spending my time behind a computer. And is it the life that I want? This is the life that I want for you, I don't know. And especially when I'm talking to people more connected to spirituality. We are in the church right now, so I really wanted to speak about spirituality. But yes, when you find some people spending some time in the nature and discovering their own body through activity, yes, we can find some tools, and having some tools to very get into, and time is very important for that. But also, I really hope that I won't make a geek generation of people behind the screen, and that maybe the answer is not just on technology, but also on the way we connect to each other. That's why I thank you, Post Festival, for having this moment in physical moment, and I'm not in a computer somewhere in Paris talking with you, and I have this possibility to connect it to some materiality, physical way to connect with you.
Well, yeah, thank you. I think it's a beautiful high note to end on. If there's no more questions from the audience, because that's so why we. But yeah, okay. So that's the perfect circle. Thank you so much for coming. Iyo all the way from Paris, Stefan all the way from Cologne, via Brussels. Yeah, it's been an immense pleasure to have you here, even though my questions were weird. At some point, I got lost in my notes. But yeah, it's been so nice to have you here. It's been a real pleasure having you as an audience to have this event again. Hopefully, there'll be much more posts from now on again. We're still working, trying to build up a big project that will travel the Nordic countries. We're this close at realizing it, but it's always one step forward, two steps back. But hopefully we'll be back soon in some form. Hopefully a really physical form. there is some kind of magic getting people together in a room. So even though talking about technology and looking at like extremely alienating technology, but there is hope and trying to subvert it and to think about technology in a new way, in a rehumanizing way. So on that note, thank you very much for coming. I promised you a drink at the bar. There is drinks in the bar. Hang around, talk with Iyo and Stefan, and see you hopefully soon again. So. And an extra big hand to Mona, who's been sitting at the back of the room all day. Thank you so much. Yeah, even though I tried my hardest.